To the left would be Lieutenant Colonel Amanda Mason, DC National Guard. Dr. Paul Souza, the founder of the Cybersecurity Forum Initiative. Lieutenant General Karen Gibson, Senate Sergeant at Arms. Major General Mitchell Kilgo, Communications and Electronic Command, former commander there. And Command Sergeant Major David Redmon, the former Senior Enlisted Advisor for Cyber Command and NSA. And so, without further ado, I'll let you just go ahead and start doing what you do, mentoring and wisdom advice. You're up first.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It is so wonderful to be here. Number one, it's really hard to follow Diane Janicek, Kevin Mandia. I thought being after or before lunch was bad, but now we're between you and social and ice cream, right? So that's always bad. However, we did save the best for last, just in my opinion. So again, this is just such an honor to be up here. I am on stage with over 150 years of leadership experience on this stage, and it really is a true privilege just to be amongst these giants, I think, in our industry. And without further ado, I'll actually give a little bit of an extra introduction because I think it helps us connect. So as I go through these, please think of your questions that you may want to ask. It's very rare to get such brain power on stage, and we do have a limited amount of time. We want to make sure that they've already heard my questions and I already know their answers, and they're more concerned about what questions that you may have from the audience. So we'll make sure we turn the floor over. But what I'll do is I'll actually start at the very end. I'll start with Command Sergeant Major Dave Redmon, retired. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So he's currently serving as the Chief of Staff and a member of an executive team at one of the nation's largest banks nationally. He's headquartered out of Montana, and he's responsible for corporate strategy, client experience, digital delivery, product and management, product and program management, data analytics, enterprise architecture, and innovation across his organizations across 14 states. That sounds nothing like his last job. Dave retired back in 2018 with over 35 years of military service in the Army, and he held joint assignments at almost every echelon in the Department of Defense. And his last position was Senior Enlisted Leader for U.S. Cyber Command, NSA Central Security Service. One fun note about Dave here, he'll be inducted in the Military Intelligence Hall of Fame. Congratulations. Next, we have Major General retired Mitchell Kilgo. He's currently the Executive Partner of Federal Government Region at Gardner, so congratulations. He just retired in December of last year after 34 years of service. Amongst other positions, he was the the Inspector General of the United States Inspector General Agency, as well as other assignments, including overseeing the Army's IT hardware and software global logistics enterprise, 16th Commander of U.S. Army Communications Electronics Command, Senior Commander of Aberdeen Proving Ground, the J6 of CENTCOM, Commander of 5th Theater Signal Command, and G6 of the U.S. Army. And one fun little fact is from 2001 and 2004, he worked as the L&O in the Information Dominance Center, aka Land Information Warfare Activity, aka 1st IO Command. Thank you so much for coming, sir. Yeah. Then we have Lieutenant General retired Karen Gibson, currently the Honorable Karen Gibson, serving as the 42nd Senate Sergeant at Arms, where among many things, she's responsible for the operation, maintenance, modernization, security of all the Senator's communications devices, networks here in Washington and across the country. Before joining the legislative branch, she served for 33 years in the U.S. Army and stood up the Army's Offensive Cyber Brigade, the 780th Military Intelligence Brigade. She's also Deputy Commanding General of U.S. Army Cyber Command, where she stood up Joint Force Headquarters Cyber at Fort Gordon, Georgia, right? Where she supported military ops in CENTCOM and AFRICOM AORs. And despite her amazing innovation and responsibility for technology modernization, she still drives a Ford Ranger, and it is a stick shift that was purchased as a new lieutenant colonel coming back from deployment in Korea. Was it tax-free purchase overseas? And then last but not least is Dr. Paul Souza. Paul is the president and founder of the Cybersecurity Forum Initiative. The mission of CSFI is to provide cyber awareness guidance and security solutions through collaboration, education, collaborative training, volunteer, and to assist the U.S. government, the U.S. military, commercial interest, and international partners. He's also faculty at George Washington University. And even though I have a fun fact, I also want to highlight that even though he's not military, he teaches all of us, if you've ever been to any of the events at CSFI, and his wife is in the service as well as his children are in the service. So thank you so much. And it's a good thing that Paul is on our side, because little fun fact about him, he was inspired to get into the cyber field after watching the 1983 movie War Games, where he wanted to hack the Pentagon like Matthew Broderick did.
You got displayed this book.
But he didn't have a modem.
Yes. Yeah, I wanted, that was an incredible movie, right? And I really got inspired. Actually, my mom was my mentor. She was the one to say, hey, why buy a guitar, for Christmas? Get a computer, because that's the future. So she gave me a computer. And, and I'm super excited because I'm like, man, I'm going to hack the Pentagon, release those nukes, Russia, all kinds of things. It's going to be awesome. So I get the computer, I turn it on, and it's running BASIC. You guys remember BASIC? Yeah. So, the command prompt says, ready. And I'm like, Mom, ready for what? And she's like, well, son, you have to actually learn how to code and how to do these things. And I'm like, really? Oh, maybe, you should have got me the guitar. But that's how I got started with the whole thing. It's funny.
So one of the key things too is, we need more mentors for Paul here on that. But also that, we all started somewhere, and that we all had that first moment of we didn't know it all. And now as we progress in our careers, I think it's important to note, and you'll see me use everyone's first name, because today it's not about their rank or what they've done, but it's about being a mentor to you and everybody here. And just like anything, we're human, we have flaws, we make mistakes, and we also have to be able to move forward. So as we go forward, again, please think of your questions, and I definitely look forward to some of these answers. We'll actually start with Paul. What are the main traits you look for in people wanting to be mentored?
Good question. Well, traits. I guess the first thing would be passion for me. It's not something that you can be actually taught, right? It's something that comes from within. And you got to have that. Or you have to be teachable as a mentee, right? So I look for that. I look for passion. And also, I'd say, the right motivation, I guess, because what I see, folks trying to break in the cybersecurity industry, they're usually thinking about the money. That's just my observation. Like, hey, I want to get into cybersecurity because, I want to make, bank. Well, also I observed that folks like that usually don't get there. They don't make it. The ones that are actually curious, the ones that have passion, the ones that love cyberspace and they want to learn and understand what's going on are the ones that actually go places. So that's a main characteristic that I look for when I'm trying to mentor someone. And one thing that I don't like would be the sense of entitlement. No one is entitled to be mentored. There's no such thing, right? And maybe because we're here in the DC area, and we have a lot of folks that are privileged. Many of them have that mindset that, hey, I deserve this, instead of like I should earn it. So that's the difference.
All right, thank you. I think just sort of the flip side of that, my next question is for Dave, is what are your considerations when you choose a mentor?
What I learned is mentorship's kind of about a two-way partnership, right? You can't force yourself. It's not based on your position or, you have an expectation as a supervisor to do certain types of developmental things. But in my mind, the deepest, richest Mentorship relationships are those that you enter into folks that you wouldn't expect to. It transcends a rank, it transcends an organization, and it really is both parties being willing to enter into this relationship. And I think you find where you may have thought you were the one providing more mentorship at the beginning based on your experience, you end up learning far more in the end than you thought you might.
Great answer. That's wonderful. That actually leads me to Karen. My question for you. Is it possible to be too high or too low ranking to mentor and to be mentored?
Absolutely not. Never. In fact, I found that the more senior I became, the more I felt I desperately needed a mentor. I think that the military, the Army at least, that I grew up in, had a very deliberate, conscious mentoring and counseling program. You know, whether it started when I was a young lieutenant and on payday, you weren't allowed to go home until all your subordinates had received their monthly counseling, to, you know, very important developmental counseling, all the way up through, I would say, the rank of colonel. But by the time I became a general officer, it felt like all the mentoring stopped, mostly because we were too busy fighting wars in the SecCom AOR. Mitch and I are battle buddies there. And, you know, and what are you going to say, like, to the combatant commander? Hey, sir, I know you got to run up to the pen. I know you're preparing for congressional testimony. I know you're, you know, talking to prime minister somewhere. But when you get back, can I get like 45 minutes to talk about my career? You know, I mean, that the leaders I was working for were generally too busy. And also, as a senior person, suddenly you're thrust into positions where you're often doing something for the first time. And not just your first time, but you haven't seen someone else do it. So, like as a brigade S3, I'm watching the battalion commanders. When I was a battalion commander, I was watching my brigade commander, George Franz. So that when I became a brigade commander, I would say, what would Colonel Franz do? But all of a sudden, now as a senior, you're doing something for the very first time. So when Ron Krause and I were standing up the Joint Force Headquarters at Fort Gordon, Georgia, there had never been one before. What are we supposed to model it on? And who do I talk to mentor? So I have, as a senior, both general officer and now out of uniform, but still in government, continually seek mentors. And I know I've been talking a bit. I want to add a second part on that just to acknowledge some folks here. I think it's perfectly appropriate, probably preferable to have multiple mentors for different things. And so I knew I would see Dave Redmon today, but I did not realize I would see so many other of my former colleagues. And I considered Sergeant Major Redmon to be a mentor of mine when I was brigade commander. You know, his insights into the enlisted force, into my senior NCO development, we had a relationship that I really valued. You know, Ron Krause, a technical mentor, as we're standing up and creating cyber mission teams, cyber support teams, cyber protection teams that have never existed before, and someone who's steeped in that technical knowledge who can help me there. And then I've already called out also Colonel Franz, General Franz, who, again, when I was brigade commander, there were two of my former brigade commanders that I used to think about, and he'd been one of them. And so having different mentors for different areas of your professional or even personal life, I think is entirely appropriate, because you're probably not going to find one person who can really advise and guide you through every situation that you might be facing.
Thank you. That was such an amazing answer. Thank you so much. Mitch, over to you. What is the difference then with all these roles and the different types of mentors? So then what are the differences between a mentor, a teacher, a coach, and advice?
Yeah, that's a great leeway into this, because as Karen talked about, you need all of those, and everybody's not going to be a mentor. So let me just start by saying, first of all, for everybody here, if you're not in one of these capacities, you need to be, because it is a two-way street, right? So what I think for me, teacher is someone that is probably for a period of time that's going to help you through a job, a situation, some type of advice, teaching you something about what it is you should know. Could be somebody you're replacing in a job, could be somebody that's had the job that you reached to, but you're going to gain some of that knowledge from them. The other two, though, coach and mentor, to me are the most critical ones, because those two add on three other elements that was very important for me. You're going to get some experience in coaches and teachers, along coaches and mentors. They have to see some potential in you, and you potential in them to mentor you, right? And then time. It takes a lot of time. And you have to be committed to that, they have to be committed. So I'm an old athlete, so my old college football coach, we still stay in touch. And I still consider him a coach of mine, a life coach. And we talk about things, because he didn't understand the military, but we talk about all types of other things. And he will pick up the phone, or I'll pick up the phone anytime I need him or he needs me. And say, a couple of years ago, he says, hey, we got the sports banquet this year. I don't have a guest speaker. Can you come and be a guest speaker? So I went to be a guest speaker. And so, lifetime connection between us. I don't talk to him every day. We may email once every 4 or 5 months. I may see him once or twice a year. But I know I can reach out to him anytime. And then that mentor and that experience, leveraging the experience of a mentor, something that someone who's walked in your shoes before, who can really give you great sound advice, guidance, somebody who's not just going to tell you what you want to hear, but what you need to hear, that's going to challenge you, that's going to make you work. And so it is a two-way street. And you're going to get something, they're going to get something. But for me, those mentors, and they're few and far between. I've got about 3 or 4 that I really call mentors, and they're like extended members of my family. And so it's a difference between them and the coaches that I have there, because I have much more coaches, and then I have some of those teachers that I still reach to from time to time, but taught me something along the way, because you can't do it by yourself. And so Kilgo says you need all 3, coaches, teachers, and mentors, to be successful. And you have to be able to serve in the capacity of all 3 of those to ensure that the whole benefits.
Thank you so much. I just love hearing the passion and the obviously the caring, looking out for one another in your responses. And so just I want to make sure they already know my questions. I want to make sure that one of the key barriers, as we talk about, is usually access. So I'm going to go ahead and take a pause on any of my questions to make sure that if you have any questions, now's the time.
Going once,
I know, right?
going twice.
All right, okay. All right, so it's a good thing I have my list here.
All right, Madam, if I can I
Yes.
make just a comment? So a mentee, and this is something I struggle with as a young officer, it requires courage to get a coach, teacher, mentor. It requires courage, because a lot of times you want to sit back and you're afraid to go approach someone. And you got to take that first step, right? Because the worst they can do is say no, right? And so it requires some courage. And then if you have a senior leader say, call me, email me, do it, okay? Because most of the time, and I think I speak for everybody, we're not kidding. And sometimes we're testing to see if you're actually going to reach out and you'll get a response.
So I think some things to help break that ice even more so, not only was it sort of the fun facts, and there'll be a test on your way out before you can get your ice cream or drink there, but we've all hit a point in transition in our military lives. We've all had a chance to start from what, basically the pre-cyber days, paving the path. And so that sort of experience, I think, is extremely beneficial, and we've all been in your shoes. And so again, take advantage. This is the access now. And maybe if there's a few minutes to spare afterwards. So my question to the group is, based on this transition, I think that we have between, your family's now in the military, you're now father service members. Ma'am, you're now in the legislative branch. Sir, you're now in the federal private sector sales and technology innovation piece. And you're definitely in the private sector of the banking system. So based on from uniform into your civilian clothes, how has mentorship differed between the military and now your current positions?
Since I went the farthest afield, I'll go ahead and start. My expectations were probably that it would be uniquely different. Things are motivated by the dollars in the banking industry, highly technical. My thought was, folks they're comfortable in their jobs. They don't necessarily all want to progress. What I found was remarkably the same, right? There is no American that shows up at work on any given day not wanting to do better for themselves, for the most part. It's just the way you deliver your guidance, the way you deliver mentorship. It has taken quite a bit to recognize that the only question that they wanted to know about what I did in my previous life was what service were you in? Thank me for my service, and then all of the rest of it was what I could bring to the organization. And what I have found is that there's a thriving out there, at least in my company, that they don't know what mentorship is. They know what supervisory or managerial tasks are between their supervisor and them, but they really don't have this sense of mentorship. And the quickest way to find out is if that individual that I'm spending time with talking about their future isn't considering something outside of our current organization, then they're only thinking within a very narrow confines of their own unique experience inside of our company. So what I've recognized is you can apply many of the same skills, whether it's individual development plans, talking about goal setting. If you relax, you put all of those barriers away, match those with those that are willing to have the conversations, you will find that the things that you do in the military absolutely transfer well, whether they know it or whether you know it sometimes. It is remarkably similar. The last thing I would add now that I manage the executive team, the calendar, I'm part of the group, but I have this additional responsibility as the chief of staff. And it is like any cyber command meeting where you've got 7 general officers and the commander, right? And everyone's aligned and things are going well, and then you leave and everyone's got their own agendas that you're trying to get synchronized back together. So, a little bit of fun fact, it very much is the same out there in the corporate world, even outside of the defense sector.
I would say, as I mentioned, I feel a continual need for mentors, and I continue to mentor some military officers who I've had a sustained relationship with. In my current capacity, I've sought mentors now active in a network for senior women in law enforcement, since I'm the senior law enforcement official for the Senate. And I've also sought and gained mentors to assist me in navigating the politically fraught environment of the legislative branch. And so I think it's a matter of identifying what your kind of developmental needs are, where you feel less sure of yourself or where you may want that advice or that coaching. And then I think there are all kinds of organizations in the civilian, networking organizations and other organizations in the civilian world I have found that can help align you with people who have the expertise that you are looking for, other similarly committed professionals who want to help and learn from one another.
Okay, real quick. This life is about service. So we're here to serve and not to be served. So I mentor a good number of veterans that are actually transitioning and they want to get into cyber. Most of them, they're done with their service. And, some believe that, okay, now it's time to be served. And that's just the wrong mindset. And it's out there, okay? And that's the entitlement that I was talking about. Not only in the military, but, across. But in the military, that's an interesting observation, something that I've noticed. That some folks are like, okay, I've served, and now I want to be served. So the thing would be, I served, and now it's time to double serve. And that's just a mindset that we should have.
Yeah, for me, it's a little different right now because I'm just finishing all the honeydews, and so so I'm just getting into the non-military workforce. But so I'm the mentee right now in Gardner as I'm learning and approaching this new job that I have. But one of the beauties of the job is one of my primary functions is teaching and training CIOs and helping them align their business strategy to innovation, to their resources, to meet their mission objectives. So I took the leap that I'm going to take the other path now, and as they get me up to speed, and I'll leverage my experience and what they teach me to further CIOs in the federal space.
Thank you. I can't thank you enough. Again, I know as we're running out of time to move on to the next piece, but if you get a chance to stop and ask questions for this panel, please do so. The answers and that they gave me to the questions that I still have on this paper were just amazing. And just again, thank you so much today for your time and just for your contribution and your effort Yeah, thank you.